A wonderful exchange between Keanu Reeves, Ana de Armas, and Sydney Sweeney. The evening sky was painted in soft orange and pink as the sun dipped lower behind the city skyline. The world outside seemed loud and fast, but inside a quiet cafe at the corner of the street, time felt slower. Keanu Reeves sat alone at a wooden table, his calm face lit by the golden glow of the fading daylight. Many people would have rushed to take his picture or break his silence, but in that moment he looked like any other man lost in thought. He sipped his tea gently, as if each drop carried a memory. Suddenly the door opened with a little chime, and Ana de Armas walked in. Her steps were graceful, but there was a certain weight in her eyes, like someone carrying untold stories. She noticed Keanu, and a soft smile touched her lips. She had known him through work, but here, away from cameras and flashing lights, he seemed different, more human, more fragile, yet stronger in spirit. Before either could exchange a word, another sound broke the quiet. It was laughter, young and free. Sydney Sweeney entered the cafe, her energy filling the air like a spark of light in the fading day. She carried a small notebook in her hand, as if she had been writing thoughts she did not want to lose. When she saw Keanu and Ana, her eyes widened in surprise, but instead of turning shy, she walked up to them with the kind of honesty only youth can carry. The three sat together. It should have been an ordinary meeting of familiar faces, but something in the air made it feel extraordinary. The world outside kept rushing, but inside that cafe, the pace of life shifted. Ana leaned forward and spoke first, her voice low, almost like she was speaking to herself.
Life is strange. We are always surrounded by people, yet sometimes we feel alone.
Keanu listened, nodding slowly. He had always carried silence like an old friend, but when he finally spoke, his words carried weight. Loneliness teaches us things that no noise ever can. It teaches patience, it teaches strength, and sometimes it teaches kindness. Sydney, curious and open, tilted her head. Kindness? She asked. How can loneliness teach kindness? Keanu looked at her, his eyes soft yet deep. When you know how heavy silence can be, you never want anyone else to carry it alone. So you show kindness, even when no one is looking. Ana placed her hand lightly on the table. There was something in his words that touched her heart. She thought of her own struggles, the moments when she had to fight to be understood, the times when the world only saw her image and not her soul.
He is right,
Ana whispered.
The people who know pain often become the ones who heal others. It is strange, but it is true.
Sydney listened, her youthful spirit suddenly quiet. She thought about the times she had been judged, when people misunderstood her dreams or called her naive. She realized that even though Keanu and Ana were older and more experienced, their struggles were not so different from hers. And then came the moment that would stay in all their hearts. An older man, dressed in worn clothes, entered the cafe. He looked tired, his steps heavy, and he hesitated near the counter. His pockets seemed almost empty, his face lined with quiet shame. Without a word, Keanu stood up. He walked to the counter and gently placed money for the man's coffee, but he did it without seeking attention. He did not ask the man's name, he did not wait for thanks. He only placed his hand softly on the man's shoulder, a small gesture that said, "You are seen." Ana watched, her eyes shining with quiet admiration. Sydney's mouth opened slightly, as if she had witnessed something rare, something pure. The old man's eyes filled with tears. He whispered, "Thank you." But Keanu only nodded and walked back to the table. No cameras were there, no reporters, no audience. It was a moment meant for no one, yet it carried the power to change everyone who witnessed it. Anna smiled faintly.
This, she said softly, this is what the world forgets to talk about. Not fame, not power, but simple respect for another human being.
Sydney leaned closer, her voice filled with wonder. People always tell stories about you, Keanu, but I think this is the real story. The small things. The ones no one writes about. Keanu shrugged gently, almost embarrassed. I don't think about it much. I just know that sometimes giving respect is more powerful than giving advice. The cafe was quiet again, but in their hearts, something had shifted. They realized that this meeting was not about chance. It was about understanding, about finding the invisible thread that connects one soul to another. And as the night grew darker, they sat there, sharing stories not for fame, not for attention, but because each word spoken carried truth. For Anna, it was a reminder that kindness heals. For Sydney, it was proof that even small gestures matter. And for Keanu, it was simply another day of living with humility, a choice he had made long ago. But none of them knew, as they sat in that quiet cafe, that this simple evening would turn into a story that would be remembered far beyond the walls of that place. The voice of silence the next day began with the soft light of morning slipping through the windows of the city. The cafe from the night before looked almost ordinary again, as if nothing special had happened there. But in the hearts of Keanu, Anna, and Sydney, the memory of that evening stayed alive. Anna woke up early, still thinking about Keanu's words. She could hear his voice in her mind, steady and calm, saying that loneliness teaches kindness. She wondered how many times in her own life she had been silent when she wanted to cry, or strong when she wanted to fall. She realized that silence had shaped her more than applause ever had. Sydney, on the other hand, wrote everything down in her little notebook. She was young, and for her, every moment felt like a lesson she did not want to forget. She wrote about the old man, about the way Keanu's small gesture changed the whole air of the cafe. She wrote about Anna's quiet strength, about the way her words sounded like gentle truth. But for Keanu, the morning felt the same as always. He did not carry pride in what he had done. He did not even think of it as kindness. To him, it was simply human. Yet deep inside, he carried a weight that others could not see. A weight made of memories, of loss, of pain he never spoke about. Later that afternoon, they all met again. Not at the cafe, but on a quiet street where old trees lined the sidewalk. Sydney had insisted they walk together, saying she wanted to feel the world more slowly, like Keanu always seemed to do. As they walked, Anna noticed how people kept looking at them. Strangers stared, some with excitement, some with curiosity. But none of that mattered. What mattered was the conversation that began. Sydney broke the silence first. I think about that man from last night. He looked like he was carrying his whole life in his eyes. And when you helped him, Keanu, it was like his burden became lighter, even for a moment. Keanu's gaze stayed ahead. Sometimes, he said softly, you don't need to solve someone's life. You just need to remind them they are not invisible. Anna felt her heart tighten at those words. But what about you, Keanu? She asked. Who reminds you that you are not invisible? For the first time, Keanu slowed his steps. His silence was heavier now. Sydney looked at him with wide eyes, waiting. He finally answered, his voice low. There are days when no one does. But I learned long ago that waiting for someone else to see you can hurt. So I learned to see others first. In that way, I don't feel as lost. Anna stopped walking. She looked at him, really looked. That's not just kindness, she said. That's resilience. Sydney felt something stir inside her. She had always thought resilience was about never breaking, but now she understood it was about breaking, and still choosing to stand again. As they stood under the trees, an unexpected voice called out. It was the old man from the café. His eyes lit up when he saw them, and he hurried over, though his steps were still heavy. "I didn't think I would see you again," he said, his voice trembling. "I wanted to thank you properly. Yesterday you gave me more than coffee. You gave me back a piece of dignity." Keanu shook his head. "You don't need to thank me. Just keep walking forward." But the old man insisted. "You don't understand. People walk past me every day. I feel like I am a shadow. But yesterday, someone finally looked at me as a man. That is not small. That is everything." Anna's eyes filled with tears. Sydney bit her lip, holding back the wave of emotions. Then the old man did something unexpected. He reached into his worn coat and pulled out a small, folded piece of paper. "I have nothing to give, but this. This is a poem I once wrote. I want you to have it." Keanu took the paper with both hands, treating it with more respect than gold. He unfolded it carefully, and the words inside were written in shaky handwriting. The poem spoke of loss, of love, of the pain of being forgotten, but it also spoke of hope, of light in the smallest gestures. It was raw, it was imperfect, but it was real. As Keanu read it aloud, his voice steady and full of quiet strength, Anna and Sydney felt chills run through them. It was as if the old man's pain had found a home in their hearts too. When he finished, silence hung in the air. But it was not empty silence. It was the kind of silence that holds truth. Sydney whispered, "This poem. It feels like all of us. Like the parts of ourselves we hide." The old man nodded. "That is why I wrote it. Because even shadows need to speak." Keanu folded the paper again, carefully, and placed it in his jacket. "Then your words will not be forgotten. They will live here," he said, touching his chest. The old man's eyes shone with tears, but they were tears of relief, not despair. And in that moment, the three, Keanu, Anna, and Sydney, understood something deeper. Kindness was not just in giving. It was also in receiving, in holding someone's truth, in letting them know their story mattered. They had not planned this meeting, but it became the heart of their journey. What began as a small act in a cafe had grown into a bond, not just between them, but with a stranger who had once felt invisible. And as the old man slowly walked away, his shoulders seemed lighter, his steps a little stronger. The hidden letter the night after their meeting with the old man, none of them slept easily. Keanu lay awake in his quiet apartment, the folded poem resting on his table. He read it again and again, and every time the words seemed to reach deeper into his soul. He had known loss. He had known silence. But reading another man's pain made him realize how many voices in the world go unheard. Anna sat by her window, her heart heavy. She kept thinking about what she had asked Keanu. Who reminds him that he is not invisible? His answer had stayed with her, and she felt a deep respect for the way he carried his pain without asking anything in return. She wondered if she herself had been too focused on her struggles to notice when others needed to be seen. Sydney, restless and full of energy, kept writing in her notebook. But this time, her words were not just thoughts. She wrote questions. Why do people ignore each other? Why do we pass by without looking? Why do we wait for someone else to act when we ourselves can act? She did not have the answers, but she knew she wanted to find them. The next morning they met again, this time at a quiet park. Birds sang above them, children played in the distance, and the three sat on a wooden bench, the poem resting in Keanu's hand. "There is something about these words," Keanu said slowly, "that feels unfinished, like there is more to his story." Anna nodded.
Yes. It feels like the poem is only a part of a larger truth.
Sydney leaned forward, her eyes bright with curiosity. What if he has more? What if there are other poems or letters or something he wants to say but never could? Just then, as if fate had been listening, they saw the old man again. He was sitting alone on another bench, his coat pulled tightly around him. His eyes looked tired, but when he saw them approach, a faint smile crossed his face. "You came back," he said softly.
"We wanted to see you again,"
Anna replied gently.
"Your poem, it stayed with us."
The old man lowered his head, almost embarrassed.
"I wrote many things, but most of them are hidden. I never thought anyone would care."
Keanu sat beside him. "Where are they now?" The man hesitated, his hands shaking slightly.
"In a small box, under my bed. Old letters, poems, even some notes I never finished. I never showed them to anyone. I thought they were meaningless."
Sydney's voice rose with emotion.
"They're not meaningless. Your words matter. They can make people feel seen, just like your poem did for us."
The old man looked at her, his eyes wet. But what if the world laughs? What if no one understands? Keanu placed a steady hand on his shoulder. The world always finds a way to misunderstand. But it also finds a way to remember. What matters is not what people laugh at, but what truth survives. Anna smiled softly.
"Maybe your words are not just yours anymore. Maybe they belong to all of us now."
After a long silence, the old man finally nodded. "Then come with me. I want to show you something." He led them to a small, run-down building a few blocks away. The stairs creaked as they climbed, the walls marked by years of wear. When they entered his tiny room, the air smelled faintly of old paper and dust. Beneath the bed, just as he said, was a wooden box. He pulled it out with trembling hands, and when he opened it, their eyes widened. Inside were dozens of folded papers, some yellowed with age, others torn at the edges, all covered with his shaky handwriting. Anna picked one carefully and opened it. It was a letter, written to no one in particular, speaking about dreams he once had and how they faded with time. The words were raw, painful, but also filled with longing. Sydney unfolded another. It was about a woman he once loved, whose memory he carried like a quiet flame even after years. Keanu took one more and read it silently. It spoke of hunger, of cold nights, of feeling forgotten, but also of moments of light, small acts of kindness that had saved him more than once. The three sat there, surrounded by his words, and for a moment it felt like they were inside his soul.
"You never shared these?"
Sydney asked, her voice breaking.
"No,"
the old man whispered, "because I thought no one would want them." Who wants to hear the story of a shadow? Keanu closed his eyes for a moment, then spoke firmly. "I do. We do. And I believe the world does too." Anna touched the old man's hand gently.
"Sometimes shadows carry the most powerful light."
And then, an idea began to form between them. What if these letters were not meant to stay hidden? What if they could be shared, not to seek fame, but to remind people of humanity, of respect, of kindness? Sydney, her notebook clutched tightly in her hands, whispered, "Maybe this is why we met. Maybe this is the real exchange we were meant to have. His words, our voices, one story." Keanu looked at the box again, his expression calm but filled with quiet determination. "Then we must make sure these words are not lost." In that small, forgotten room, surrounded by paper and silence, a decision was made. The promise of light the night after they discovered the old man's hidden letters, the three of them could not stop thinking about what they had read. Each letter felt like a voice that had been trapped in silence for years, waiting for someone to finally listen. Keanu sat alone in his apartment with the small wooden box on the table before him. He gently unfolded one paper after another, reading the old man's pain, his hopes, his forgotten dreams. Every word seemed to carry the weight of a life that had been invisible to the world. He thought of all the stories that go unheard every day, and it made his heart heavy. Anna, sitting at her desk, thought about her own past. She remembered the times when people judged her without knowing her struggles, the nights she cried alone, the days she doubted her own worth. She realized that if her story had not been heard, she might have felt the same loneliness the old man carried. Sydney, lying awake with her notebook in her hands, kept writing questions to herself. What if we never met him? What if his words stayed hidden forever? How many other people are out there with stories we never hear? She felt restless, as if the weight of silence around the world had suddenly pressed onto her young heart. The next day they gathered again, this time in a quiet library. The wooden box sat on the table between them, filled with the old man's letters. Sydney leaned forward, her voice firm. We can't let this stay hidden. These words matter. They could change people. They changed me already. Anna nodded. But how do we share them? The world is loud. People don't always stop to listen. Keanu looked at them both, his eyes steady. Sometimes one small act can break through the noise. We don't need the whole world. We just need to reach even one heart. That is enough to begin. Just as they were about to decide, the old man walked in slowly. His steps were weak, but his eyes were stronger than before. I don't know what you will do with my words, he said quietly, but if you believe they can mean something, then I will trust you. He handed Keanu another folded paper. This one was different. It was sealed in an old envelope, yellowed with time. I never showed this to anyone, the old man whispered. I wrote it to my son, but I never gave it to him. I don't know if he would want to read it now. The air grew heavy. Anna's hands trembled as she touched the envelope. Sydney's eyes widened with suspense. Keanu opened it carefully and began to read aloud. The letter was filled with regret and longing. It spoke of mistakes, of years lost, of a father who failed to be there but who never stopped loving his child. The words were raw and broken, yet full of love. By the time Keanu finished reading, silence filled the library. None of them spoke for a long moment. Does your son know where you are? Anna asked gently. The old man shook his head. No, we lost touch years ago. I don't even know if he would want to see me. Maybe he has forgotten me. Maybe he hates me. Sydney's heart ached. No child forgets a father's love. Maybe he's waiting too. Maybe he just doesn't know how to reach you. Keanu placed the letter back into the envelope. His voice was calm but filled with quiet strength. This is not just about words anymore. This is about healing. If there is even a chance, we must try to find him. The old man's eyes filled with tears. But what if he rejects me? Anna reached out and held his hand. Then at least you will know you tried. Silence hurts more than rejection. You deserve peace. The weight of the moment hung heavy on them all. What began as a simple act of kindness in a café had now turned into something much larger, a chance to reunite a father and a son, to turn hidden words into healing. Sydney's voice broke the silence. Then let's make it a promise. We will not stop until we try to give this letter to your son. Keanu nodded slowly. A promise of light. Even in darkness, there must be a way forward. The old man's shoulders shook, but this time it was not from weakness. It was from hope, hope he had not felt in years. And in that library, under the quiet gaze of old books and dusty shelves, a new journey began. A journey not just of kindness, but of courage. The search for a son the morning after their promise, the air felt heavier, as if the world itself was testing their resolve. Keanu, Anna, and Sydney met the old man once again at the café where it all began. The wooden box of letters sat between them like a silent witness to their mission.
"We made a promise," Sydney said firmly, her notebook in hand. "We will find your son, no matter how hard it is." The old man's hands shook as he folded the envelope with the letter inside. "His name is Daniel," he whispered. "I have not spoken to him in almost 20 years. The last time I saw him, he was angry. I do not know where he lives now." Keanu's calm voice cut through the weight of silence. "Anger is only pain that has not been healed, but pain can be softened. We will try." They began their search the same day. Anna took the old letter and carefully studied the address written on the back, though it was faded and old. "This place may not even exist anymore," she said. "We start there," Keanu replied. "Even the smallest step can lead us closer." The journey led them through narrow streets and quiet corners of the city. The address brought them to an old neighborhood where buildings stood worn but alive with memories. They asked around, speaking to shopkeepers and neighbors. One shop owner, a kind woman with gentle eyes, paused when they mentioned Daniel's name. "I remember a boy with that name. Strong-willed, full of dreams. But he left long ago. He wanted a better life. No one here knows where he went." Sydney's heart sank. "What if we are too late?" Keanu placed a hand on her shoulder. "Too late is only when you stop trying." As they turned to leave, an old neighbor approached. His back was bent, but his memory was sharp. "Daniel," he said slowly. "He used to write letters to his father, even after he left. But one day, the letters stopped. No one knows why." Anna's eyes widened. "Letters? Where are they now?" The neighbor shook his head. "I don't know. But I remember he once spoke of moving near the river. A small house, near the docks." The clue was faint, but it was something. And so their search continued, now toward the river. The walk was long, the streets unfamiliar, and the sun was beginning to set. The old man grew weaker with every step, but he pushed forward, holding the promise close to his heart. When they finally reached the docks, the houses there looked tired, as if they too carried years of waiting. They asked around, but no one seemed to know a man named Daniel. Disappointment weighed on them, but Keanu refused to give up. Then, just as they were about to leave, a young fisherman pointed to a house at the far end of the docks. "A man lives there alone, quiet, keeps to himself. Some call him Dan. Maybe that's who you're looking for." Their hearts raced. They walked slowly toward the house, each step filled with suspense. The old man's breath grew shallow, his hands trembling as he clutched the letter meant for his son. But when they reached the door, something unexpected happened. A woman stepped out instead. She looked surprised to see them, her eyes cautious but kind. "Can I help you?" she asked. The old man's voice cracked as he tried to speak. I am looking for my son, Daniel. Does he live here?" The woman's expression shifted. She hesitated, then lowered her gaze. "He did. But he left this house years ago. He does not live here anymore." Anna's heart sank. Sydney gasped. Keanu closed his eyes for a moment, steadying himself. The old man almost fell, but Keanu caught him gently. "Where did he go?" Keanu asked quietly. The woman hesitated again, then said, "I don't know, but he left something behind." She disappeared inside the house and returned with a small tin box. She placed it in the old man's hands. "He said if anyone ever came looking for him, they should have this." The old man opened it slowly. Inside were letters, dozens of them. Some were addressed to his father but never sent. Others were written to himself, words of confusion, anger, longing. His hands shook as tears ran down his cheeks. "He did not forget me," he whispered. "He never forgot." Sidney's voice trembled. "Then we cannot stop here. We must find him, wherever he is." Keanu nodded, his eyes full of quiet determination. "This is not the end. This is the middle of the road, and we will walk it together." The promise they had made grew stronger. The mission was no longer just about a letter. It was about a broken bond waiting to be healed, a father and son waiting to meet again. And as the sun set over the river, they held the letters close, knowing the journey ahead would be even harder, but also more important than anything they had ever done before. The road of trials. The night after receiving the tin box of letters, they all sat together in silence. Keanu placed the letters carefully on the table, as if they were fragile glass. Anna read a few aloud, her voice trembling with emotion. Sidney filled page after page in her notebook, writing down what she felt. The old man simply wept, his tears falling freely for the first time in years. Each letter carried Daniel's voice, sometimes filled with anger, sometimes filled with love, sometimes only confusion. But the one thing clear in every word was this: he had not forgotten his father. "He is out there," Sidney whispered. "He is waiting, even if he doesn't know it." Keanu's voice was steady, but his eyes were deep with thought. "Then we must find him, but this will not be simple. The world does not give answers easily." The next morning, they set out once again. With only fragments of clues from the letters, they began their search. One letter mentioned Daniel working in a factory. Another spoke of him moving often, chasing jobs and chances. Yet another hinted at a small town far from the city. Their path led them out of the familiar streets and into roads where strangers knew nothing of them. Some doors opened with kindness, some closed with suspicion. People gave small pieces of information, but nothing complete. One man at a bus station remembered seeing Daniel years ago. "He spoke of traveling north, near the hills," the man said. "He was quiet, but his eyes carried storms." Hope flickered in their hearts, but so did fear. The old man grew weaker with every mile, his body not built for long journeys anymore. Several times he stumbled, and Keanu had to hold him up. "You should rest," Anna urged gently. But the old man shook his head. "I cannot stop now. I need to see him before my time ends." Sidney, her youthful fire still burning, grabbed his hand. "We won't let you fall. Not now." Their journey grew harder. Rain began to pour as they traveled toward the hills. Muddy roads slowed them down, and the old man's cough grew worse. They stopped at a small inn for shelter, the fire inside crackling as they tried to warm themselves. That night, as the rain beat against the windows, Keanu sat alone, staring at the old man sleeping in the corner. Anna joined him quietly. "He is running out of time," she whispered. Keanu nodded. "Yes. We must find his son soon, or he may never see him again." Anna's voice shook. "What if we fail? What if Daniel doesn't want to see him?" Keanu's eyes did not leave the fire. "Failure is only in not trying. Even if Daniel refuses, the truth must be spoken. Only then can there be peace." The next day, the rain stopped, and they continued their journey. As they reached the hillside town, they asked around again. Most people shook their heads, but finally, an old woman at a bakery paused. "Daniel?" she said slowly. "Yes. I remember a man by that name. He worked here for a while. Quiet, strong, but sad. He left suddenly one morning. But before he left, he asked if anyone knew where his father lived. The old man gasped at those words, tears rushing to his eyes. "He was searching for me?" The woman nodded. "Yes." But no one could give him an answer. So he left, carrying that question in his heart. The room fell silent. The truth was clear now. Daniel had been searching too, but the world had kept them apart. Sydney pressed her notebook to her chest. "He is not running away from you. He is running toward you. We just have to find the place where his steps finally stopped." But just as hope began to grow, another twist appeared. A man from the town stepped forward. "I saw him last year. He was here, near the hills, but he got into trouble. He worked with the wrong people. Then one day he disappeared. Some say he left for the city again. Others say he went deeper into the mountains." The old man's heart sank, his body trembling. What if he is lost forever? Keanu placed a hand on his shoulder. "He is not lost. Not while his words remain. We will follow them." Anna's eyes glistened. "Then we must be ready. This road is harder than we thought, but we cannot turn back." Sydney's voice rose, strong and full of youthful courage. "We made a promise. We carry it until the end." The four of them stood there, the hills stretching endlessly behind them, the unknown road ahead. The journey was far from over, and the trials would only grow heavier. But their bond had become stronger, and their mission more urgent. The old man clutched the letter to his chest, whispering, "Daniel, I am coming." And with that, they stepped forward again into the unknown, holding on to hope like a fragile but unbreakable flame. The reunion, the days on the road had grown longer, the hills steeper, and the air colder. Yet Keanu, Anna, Sydney, and the old man pressed forward. Their promise had become more than just words. It was now the center of their hearts. They followed the faint trail of Daniel's life from one town to another. Some people remembered his name. Others remembered his eyes full of sadness but also of strength. Every clue carried them deeper into the journey, and every mile brought more fear that time was running out. The old man's health grew weaker. His cough worsened, his steps slower, but his determination never broke. "I will not stop," he whispered again and again. "I must see him, even if it is only once." One evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, they reached a small village at the edge of the mountains. The people there spoke of a man who worked quietly in the fields, never speaking much, never staying too close to anyone. "He calls himself Dan," a farmer said, "but no one knows his past. He comes to work at sunrise and leaves at dusk. He is a man who carries silence like a shield." Their hearts raced. Could it be him? They walked to the fields, the golden light of dusk wrapping around them. And there, bent over the soil, was a man with broad shoulders and tired hands. His hair was streaked with gray, though he was not old. His face was lined, not just with age, but with years of pain. The old man froze. His whole body trembled as he whispered, "That is him. That is my son." Sydney clutched her notebook, her heart pounding. Anna held the old man's arm tightly, afraid he might fall. Keanu stepped forward first, steady as ever, guiding them closer. "Daniel," Keanu called softly. The man lifted his head slowly. His eyes, dark and sharp, landed on them. For a moment he looked confused. Then his gaze fell on the old man. His face stiffened, and his breath caught. "Father!" His voice cracked, raw and broken. The old man's knees gave way, but Keanu caught him before he could fall. With trembling hands, the old man reached out. "Daniel, I am here. I thought I lost you forever." Daniel stepped back, his eyes burning with both anger and longing. "Why now? After all these years? Where were you when I needed you?" Silence fell heavy in the field. The pain of two lives apart filled the air. The old man clutched the envelope, the letter he had written years ago but never delivered. "I failed you," he said, his voice shaking. "I was weak. I let life take me away from you, but not a day passed when I did not think of you. I wrote you this long ago, but I never had the courage to give it. I carried my shame instead." His hands trembled as he held out the letter. Daniel hesitated, his face torn between anger and sorrow. Sydney stepped forward, her young voice clear and strong. "He came all this way for you. He is not asking for forgiveness, only for a chance to be seen. Don't let silence steal this moment from both of you." Anna's eyes glistened as she spoke. "Anger can stay forever, but so can love. You must choose which one you want to carry." Keanu's steady voice followed. "The hardest step is not forgiving someone else. It is allowing yourself to heal. He is here now. Don't let this moment pass." Daniel's hands shook as he took the letter. He opened it slowly, the paper yellowed and fragile. As he read the words of regret, of love, of longing, his face changed. Tears filled his eyes and his body trembled. "All these years," Daniel whispered. "I thought you forgot me. I thought I didn't matter." The old man's tears fell freely. "You mattered more than anything. You were always my son. I just didn't know how to show it." And then, after years of silence, Daniel dropped to his knees and embraced his father. The old man clung to him, his frail body shaking with relief, with love, with the weight finally lifted. Anna covered her mouth, her eyes filled with tears. Sydney cried openly, her notebook falling to the ground. Keanu stood still, his eyes lowered, but inside his heart, he carried the power of the moment. The fields around them seemed to glow in the fading light. Silence filled the air, but this silence was not heavy. It was peace. The old man whispered into his son's ear, "Thank you for letting me see you one last time." Daniel held him tighter. "You're not leaving me again. Not now." And for the first time in decades, father and son were no longer separated by silence. They were one, bound not by perfect words or flawless pasts, but by love that had endured despite the years. Keanu, Anna, and Sydney stood together, knowing they had been part of something greater than themselves. What began as a small act of kindness in a café had turned into a journey of healing, respect, humility, and resilience. The story was not about fame or names or power. It was about the simple truth that kindness can lead to connection, that humility can lead to healing, and that resilience can turn broken years into a new beginning. As the sun finally disappeared behind the hills, they walked back together, father and son side by side, no longer shadows in each other's lives.